Okay, I'm so sorry for the interruption. Again, there has been some technology issue here. I'm really sorry, and I'm going to continue where I left off. So, as I was saying, the best test is to take a good look at yourself in the mirror. And uh, one good way of doing is that think about the last 1 week or the last 1 month, and think about a time when you had a little bit of stressful experience, maybe a difference of opinion with your superiors, maybe some incident at home, maybe it was something on the road, maybe it was something on the way home from work. Any incident that might have caused you a little bit of stress and that you were a little perplexed about, that brought out some reaction and some emotion inside you that was very overpowering and that took control over you. Now, if you were to put yourself outside that situation and be an onlooker unto yourself and put yourself outside the situation, take a good look at yourself, analyze, introspect, reflect upon what happened, try and understand the emotions that were going through you at that moment, and try and put a label on those emotions and try and understand why it was that the emotion overtook you. And when you do this analysis, you will be able to understand something about your emotional quotient, understand something about how emotionally intelligent your behavior was. Okay, I've been asked to pause, so I'm pausing here. Okay, when we were children, we would used to watch television on Doordarshan, and we would often come up with the one slide which said, "Sorry for the interruption," or "रुकावट के लिए खेद है." But I think we had a similar issue here. There are many of our audience members over here on this webinar today who have called in and texted in to say that they are unable to hear us. I think we have hit a record number of people who have registered for this webinar, and there might have been some technology issues that might have prevented some people from getting the audio on this. And that problem has now been fixed, and I've been requested by the people here in CII to begin my webinar one more time so that those who are uh, had been unable to hear me so far can have the benefit of beginning afresh. So, for those of you who have been tuned in and have been listening to me, you will have to suffer a repetition for some more time, and then we catch up with you later. So, once again, for those who have tuned in for the first time, this is CII Indian Men's Network webinar on Live Life and Love Work, Emotional Intelligence for Talented Women. I'm Dr. Aneeta Madhok, Managing Director of Open Spaces Consulting. I'm a professionally certified leadership coach, development coach, and trainer. And I have done a lot of work for the last 35 years in the HR field, coaching for the last 15 years, and professionally for the last 8 or 9 years. At the outset, I thanked a lot of my audience members over here for registering for this webinar in large numbers. This is a screenshot of our screen which informs us that our registrations have crossed 1,000, and I'm sure there were many more who also wanted to register, but we stopped the registrations at the number of 1,000 because of technology constraints. So, for the 1,000 viewers who are tuned in right now, my very warm thanks for registration, and thank you to CII for giving me this opportunity to reach such a large number of people. And I'm sure this topic will touch somebody somewhere, sometime or the other. So, it's about emotional intelligence. And this was a joke that came to me on the WhatsApp e-groups a couple of days ago after India lost the Women's Cricket World Cup at the Lord's Stadium in London. And this is a joke that comes that girls, when they get 219 runs out of 229, what is the impact on their emotional landscape? And boys, when they get 158 runs, and we know we performed miserably, out of 339, then what goes through us when we lost to Pakistan. But what does this tell you about emotional intelligence and women? Well, if you're a positive person and you look at things at the glass half full, you will say that women are emotionally more expressive. They can understand and touch their feelings, they can experience their feelings very deeply, and hence they have a strong emotional quotient. And if you are a positive person, you will say that men are emotionally very healthy people because they don't get caught with negative emotions. No matter how well they do or how badly they do, they're not hooked to their performance. And they would still be cheerful and life will carry on nevertheless. If you are one who sees the glass as half empty and always looks at things from a negative point of view, you will say that, well, women, this slide tells me that women are very weak and emotionally not strong, and hence they broke down and they crumbled to the pressure in the last few overs of the match, and hence there was a dejection all around, and it's apparent. So they're not very strong on emotional intelligence. And if you are a negative person, you will say, well, boys, they can't confront failure. They get into a denial mode and they pretend as if failure never happened. So therefore, boys are emotionally very weak because they don't touch their feelings and they can't connect with them. So it's up to you. There may be many more interpretations of this particular image, but I'll leave it to you to make whatever sense of it does to you. There's a person called Daniel Goleman who defined emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence as the capacity to be aware of, control, and express one's emotions, and to handle interpersonal relationships judiciously and empathetically. So it's all about knowing what your feelings are, controlling your feelings, expressing them, and handling your relationships in a way which is empathetic and judiciously, meaning which has the appropriate and right boundaries. And they say emotional intelligence is the key to both personal and professional success. As we go further into this webinar and into my presentation, you will find that we will stick around, more or less around this definition of emotional intelligence. There are many others, but we will be working mostly around this theme of emotional intelligence. Well, Daniel Goleman, who was the author of the book and the one who coined the term emotional intelligence, also says there are many tests of emotional intelligence, and most of them seem to suggest that women tend to have an edge over men when it comes to the basic skills for a happy and successful life. Well, this is the result of research done all over the world in different continents, in different countries, in different cultures. And there seems to be some genetic bias for women to be a little bit more emotionally intelligent as compared to men. But that's the outcome of the research. You may agree or disagree with that. Okay, how to know your own emotional quotient? First of all, emotional quotient is nothing but a measure of emotional intelligence. When we say quotient, it means measure. It means how much quota or what quantity. So emotional quotient is the measure of emotional intelligence. So how would you know how emotionally intelligent you are? Well, if you go online and type in Google my emotional intelligence test, and you will come across hundreds and thousands of emotional intelligence tests that are, you can take them for free. They tell you about your emotional quotient. So by all means, take those tests and treat that feedback as reliable and valid. But you know what? The best test is to take a good look at yourself in the mirror. Take a look at your reflection and see what it tells you. So, a small exercise I'd like you to do at this stage is to think about the last 1 week or the last 1 month and any stressful incident that you experienced during this time. You might have felt a sense of emotion that was sweeping over you, which was overwhelming, and you allowed the emotion to get the better of you, whether it was a positive emotion or whether it was a negative emotion. I'd like you to reflect on that incident and pretend as if you were a witness or an outsider or a spectator to that incident. Put yourself in that position and see yourself playing back all the aspects of that incident again and again. Analyze the situation, what was said, what was your reaction, what was going through you, what did you say, and then reflect on it a little more and accept whatever that reflection tells you. And it will tell you a lot of things about your emotional quotient. So take a good look at yourself in the mirror every now and try and understand what the reflection tells you about yourself. Building your EQ is about connecting with yourself every day. Wake up in the morning, spend a few minutes. If you meditate, that's wonderful. If you don't meditate, just sit up after waking up and connect with yourself for a little time every day. Bring yourself to yourself and try and tune into what your mind and your body is telling you about yourself. When you go out into the world, go with an intent to listen to what people have to say. Try and understand what other people's lives are about. One of the things that I learned some time ago was an acronym called WAIT. WAIT. And when you translate that acronym, it translates into why am I talking? So ask yourself, why am I talking? Should I be talking at this stage or should I be listening at this stage? It's amazing how little we listen to other people, and it's even more amazing how little we listen and understand other people. Once you make it a habit to listen and understand others, you will listen and you will hear so many things about life and so many lessons that life have to offer you. It's about building empathy and rapport. When you build empathy, you step into the other person's shoes. You try and live life from the other person's point of view. And when you do that, you learn something about life and about emotions and about feelings that are resident in the other person. It's about managing yourself judiciously, as Daniel Goleman said, which means drawing appropriate boundaries to behavior, knowing what to say and when, knowing when to express, when not to express. So, some self imposed boundaries which are sensitive to the situation. Otherwise, we go around blurting things that hurt people, that scare people, that disgrace ourselves. We don't know what we say if we don't manage ourselves. So managing yourself, managing your conduct helps you conduct yourself in ways that are more effective. And another point is socialize. Even if you don't like to go, if you don't like to talk to people too much, even if you're an introverted person, but still socialize, because the more people you meet, the more you will learn about yourself, the more you will learn about other people. Meet people, make it a point to go out, talk to people, take the initiative. The more you socialize, the more emotionally intelligent you will be. For the next few minutes, I'm going to give some gyan from my side, a few pearls of wisdom, some things that worked for me and that I have observed in my life as a life coach, as a psychologist, working with people in different spaces, in different places. The first lesson I have is that the brain takes its shape from what the mind rests on. So, whatever you think about, whatever you focus upon, expands to fill the universe of your thoughts. So, suppose you woke up in the morning and had breakfast and had a few lovely words with your family and enjoyed a little laughter over some newspaper item. And then you maybe had a little negative words, maybe with your maidservant. And then later on, when you find yourself at work, what do you think about more? Do you think more about uh, the little tiff that you had with your domestic help at home? Or do you think more about the wonderful time that you had with your children and your family? So, whatever you focus upon will expand to fill your universe. So, if you focus upon the problems that you had with your maid servant, your entire life will be colored by that. If you focus on the lovely times you had with your family and children, your entire mind will expand to you. So, the monster that you feed the most is the one that will become the biggest. So give your time, energy, and efforts into the things that you value more and that bring you more well being and that bring you more harmony. Because the brain takes its shape from what the mind rests on. A simple saying that I remember is from a Buddhist tablet that has been discovered. It says, watch your thoughts, for your thoughts become your actions. Watch your actions, because your actions become your character. Watch your character, because your character becomes your destiny. So, whatever you focus upon becomes your destiny. If you focus upon the glass being half empty, that becomes your destiny. If you focus upon the glass becoming half full, that becomes your destiny. So, which side are you on? Are you the kind who says the glass is half empty and life is not good enough? Or are you the kind who says the glass is half full and there's plenty of for me to be thankful for? There is a third kind that says, yes, there is half glass of water, but the glass is very muddy and very dirty and I cannot drink from it. I try not to be that kind because that's truly the destructive sort of person. The doors to happiness open inwards. The amount of time we spend in blaming the rest of the world, speaking in insinuations, hinting to others they're not good enough or they don't match up to your standards, or the world is very unforgiving, or this so and so did such and such thing to me. We have plenty to grumble about the world out there. And the more we feed the monster of blaming, grumbling, insinuations, the more that's going to occupy our minds. But if you look within and say, how can I be more welcoming? How can I be more inclusive? How can I be adding more to my life? You'll find solutions. Solutions are not out there. You can't change the world. You can't change anything about what the world is doing to you. But you can change how you respond to it and what you focus upon. Well, it all begins with an awareness of your own feelings. So if you were your mobile phone, what kind of a selfie would you take of yourself? Here's a little tool that I came across while doing some of my research, and I use this a lot with some of my coaching clients, and it helps people identify their feelings a little better. So, for example, if you look at the blue quadrant on this circle and you say, I'm feeling very peaceful. All right, peaceful is great, but can we understand it a little better? Am I feeling content? Am I feeling thoughtful? Am I feeling intimate, loving, trusting, nurturing? And there are more. Am I relaxed, pensive, responsive, serene? So there are many more adjectives that can describe our emotions. And we can go deeper. There are plenty of blank spaces there. You can add your own sense of peacefulness, what it means to you. So this is a little tool that I'm going to leave you with that will help you understand how to label your feelings, because labeling your feelings is very important. To put a word to it helps you peg what the feeling is about. And once you know what you're dealing with, it's possible to understand it better, it's possible to work with it, it's possible to resolve stuff that comes from there. Whatever you're feeling, stay with it without passing judgment or dismiss it. So, yeah, I'm not feeling good about this particular incident that happened, or I'm feeling very great about this particular incident that happened. Or today my boss said this to me and my hands went cold. And she was shouting at me and she was screaming at me, and my hands became cold and numb. I couldn't feel anything and my mind went blank. Or whatever was the incident. So, whatever the feeling, once you've labeled it, stay with it, understand it, feel it deeper, feel it as a part of your being. Once you can understand your feelings, then owning them up becomes easier. It is well known that women often get caught in what we call a perfectionist trap. Most of the working women that I know of and whom I've come in contact with, they have fought hard to be where they are. They've struggled a lot. They've excelled in school, they've excelled in college, they've excelled in business school or wherever they went. As professionals, they work very hard because they want to be recognized and they want to be the best. And for them, they work very, very passionately. To me, a perfectionist is also a passionate person. But then sometimes we get caught, and this is a very feminine thing. We get caught in a trap of perfectionism. We drive ourselves so hard, we become unforgiving on ourselves. We forget to relax. We forget to nurture ourselves. We forget to nurture our own bodies. We forget to think about who we are. We forget to give ourselves some downtime. We drive ourselves too hard. We drive people around us too hard. We find it very difficult to live with other people's mistakes, and most importantly, find it very difficult to live with our own mistakes. So, this is a perfectionist trap we often get caught in that prevents us from looking at who we are more realistically. For the next segment of this webinar, I'm going to talk about some typical situations that we will encounter in life and in work, and how to give an emotionally intelligent response. At this stage, I would like to welcome Ajita Shah. You can see a picture of her here. Ajita is a behavioral scientist, and I met her a few days ago. She has an intense interest in spirituality. She works with mind, body, soul alignment, and with the chakras of our body, with the chakras of our soul. And she is currently based in Canada, where she's living for the last 20 years, although she's a Bombay girl. And she's visiting India. I'm very happy to welcome you, Ajita. Um, would you like to say something to our audience?
Thank you very much, Aneeta, and it is such an honor and pleasure to be here with you and with these absolutely amazing 1,000 intelligent, talented women that are here with us on this webinar, talking about a topic that I think affects us on a second by second basis. That's very important to our well-being, to our development, to our happiness. So I thank you very much, and I look forward to a very, all the knowledge and information that you've given so far is very pertinent. There's so many great takeaways from it, and I look forward to the rest of the webinar and conversations together.
So we are very happy to have you, Ajita, and from the few conversations that we've had, I gathered that there's a lot of things that we hold in common, and I'm sure that we'll be able to, both of us, in our uh, conversations, bring out some of the issues that might make sense to some of the women who are tuned in. And at this stage, I've got news from CII-IWN that we also have a significant number of men who have tuned in today and who have registered for this webinar. We have over 40 men who are also in the audience list. So my very, very warm welcome to the men. I wish there were more like you who would have enrolled because I think men need to also understand the emotional landscape of women so that they can be more effective in their workplaces too. So thanks to all the women, all the men also who are registered. So in this section, we will be looking at some issues of work, and I will share my perspective, and Ajita will share hers. And if you have any questions, please make sure you have put it down. And at the end of this segment, we will be inviting your questions, which we will take on through text, but we will answer them in the audio mode. So the first aspect of work that we want to take is the most painful aspect, and that is boss relationships. If you are a woman, then regardless of whether you have a male boss or a female boss, there will always be discussions around gender issues. Whatever you do by way of work, task, accomplishment, achievements, goals, targets will always be either attributed to your gender. If you're successful, it will be attributed to your gender. If you're not successful, it will be attributed to your gender. The manner in which you work, the style which you adopt, there will be discussions around that. You will never be free of a discussion around what your gender is. Now, where I come from, I'm very, very fortunate. The first feminist in my family was my grandfather from my father's side. He was the one who brought in a value for women being educated, women being, equal to men, and women being given, equal level playing ground. Uh, he educated all his daughters. And I'm his grandchild, so I benefited from his liberal mindset, and I did not have to really fight the battle at home and deal with gender issues at home. It was only when I stepped out of home, then I realized, oh my God, there is a different world out there. And and then I started looking at the stories of the women around me, and then I discovered something more. So I was very fortunate to have been brought up in an atmosphere which was liberal and where equality was and that was set by my grandfather. So boss relationships for me meant, well, I have a boss and there is work to be done, and as professionals, we'll get along. And that's how it worked for me. So, Ajita, what is your point of view on boss relationships?
Well, like you, I was also very blessed to come from a family that, did not really have any kind of a differentiation between boys and girls. In my immediate family, we were three girls. People would always ask us, no brother? And I'd never really understood how to either answer that or what to do with it. So, always felt kind of whole and complete in myself. And so, as far as work relationships go, anything really is a relationship, but when you're working out as a woman, there is that expectation to behave like a man, to emote like a man, to perform like a man, which really, I think, on many levels is really not fair because we are hardwired differently. Doesn't mean we're better or worse, and we can do the same job um, in a different manner, but the job gets done. So I think, on a societal level, we really have to come to terms with just this basic fact that, you know, the performance is important. Who does it and how eventually it's performed is not. And I think we're all the fact that 1,000 of us are here, and including the amazing 40 gentlemen, we're all working towards coming to that sense of balance. And hopefully, the next generation is going to have much less of an issue with it than every past generation has had.
Well, my working life, I've mostly had male bosses, and it hasn't made much of a difference to me. But I often wonder what would it have been had there been a female boss. For the last 10 years, I'm doing consulting work and open spaces consulting. And I find that in my client systems, and I have new clients every year and old clients continue. In my client system, very often there are men and very often there are women who are the stakeholders or who are my bosses. In a way, I'm answerable to them. In a way, they are my clients. So I find that somewhere when I work with male bosses, my style is very different. I'm more warm, I'm empathetic, I bring things to the forefront, I deal with a lot of transparency, and sometimes the men have a different set of boundaries that they create, and I have a different set of boundaries that I create, and synchronizing becomes an issue. So I have to keep adjusting myself when I'm working for a male client. But when I'm working with a female client, I find that the chemistry is always much different because there are much open-ended boundaries, more empathy I encounter, more understanding that I encounter. So if you ask my personal opinion, yes, I would prefer to work with a female boss. The chemistry is always better. With a male boss, I have to be the one who adjusts. And I do, I have no issues with that, but I have to be the one who adjusts. So the unboundedness is generally not
And
possible.
if I may just jump in, you gave an actually a beautiful example of your emotional intelligence, which is here at play in smoothing that relationship with your boss who's a male, and you're bringing it to balance precisely using all of the tools that you're talking about or will talk about.
So uh, what would it mean for our audience? We've got an audience there consisting of about 40 men who have registered and 960 women who have registered for this event. What would be the message for our audience out there?
In terms of how to succeed in the relationships.
Yeah, if you have a male boss or a female boss, how would you deal with it?
Well, I think one of the most important things that gets lost is that we do not take our most authentic self into a workplace or such a working relationship because we think we need to be and pretend to be somebody that they want to see or is the expectation, and that actually may not even be true, and then we're trying to be somebody we're not, and then we trip over all of that stuff. So I think the most important thing is be authentic. You were hired to do a job based on qualifications, attitude, etc. They've vetted you, so take that to the job, and then from there tweak the things. Every relationship needs tweaking, and I think that would be a great success formula.
So, in a sense, what I hear you saying is that don't go by gender stereotypes when it comes to your boss relationships. Treat each boss relationship as a special relationship and requiring its own boundaries, its own tweaking, and its own chemistry.
Absolutely, bang on.
Great. Lovely insight for our audience out there. Okay, peer groups. this is the most difficult of for most people. We're very comfortable when we've got a boss and when we've got subordinate team members. It's generally, I find in my coaching and in my own life, it's the peer relationships that are more difficult to manage. With a boss, I know the person is older and senior, and perhaps I give some respect. I'm able to manage the relationship better. With subordinates, it's easier to manage. But when it comes to peer groups, there's a lot of competitiveness comes in, one-upmanship comes in. Everybody wants a unique and different space for himself. People don't want to come together. It happens in a peer group. There is a pecking order that comes into play, and a whole lot of one-upmanship. And yet, when you let your hair down, your peers are your best friends. You can hang out together. You can go out for a beer together. You can enjoy life together, and socialize with each other. Uh, Sometimes peer pressures can be big and huge. Uh, a pressure to behave in a certain way, which is acceptable, and a pressure to dress in a certain way, and everyone must be cool, and it has its own price. Uh, Generally, when you see peer groups, I've seen many organizations, IT firms where the population is young, manufacturing where population spans the entire age spectrum. And I find that no matter where you go, boys like to hang out together and girls like to hang out together too. And it's a fact. You can't get away from that. And in most organizations, other than few, it's rare for girls to be in the majority in most organizations. If you happen to be in an organization where girls are a majority, then perhaps the dynamics are different. But in most organizations, you'll have a team of 10 people will have one or maximum two girls, and that kind of ratio. So until those ratios don't become even, the girls will still be a minority in the whole. So being a woman there have been times when I have been part of teams where I'm the only woman and I'm working with so many men. And there have been times I've gone to work where I have been employed or where I've gone as a consultant to a client space. And there have been when I started out my career, there were many organizations that didn't even have a toilet or a loo for women. And it was a problem to have some kind of privacy. So the entire issues of how do you develop an emotionally intelligent response to a situation in peer group where there is gender disparity, and there will be more boys and less girls. Boys and girls hang out together, peer pressures, pecking orders. So, what do you have to say about that, Ajit? Ajita?
Well, like you said, it is a fact that I think we find comfort in similarities. So, here in the gender sense, the girls like to hang out together, boys like to hang out together. And then there are certain activities that, sort of we do together. Um, I think a lot of some of our issues that stem in the workplace come from this what you call the conflict at a personal level where we may have some jealousies and we're vying for the same position or whatever. And basic things, again, these are the platforms and the pillars of emotional intelligence that come in: empathy, self-confidence, and a lack of judgment. Because eventually, I think we're all very similar. We all want the same things. And if we firstly remove the element of judgment, that somebody's prettier, somebody is more intelligent, somebody is doing this, somebody is doing that, and remove those labels, then we can meet them sort of at their own level. And then many a times there may be even a reason as to why a person's emoting and behaving in a certain way. When you use all your empathetic skills, maybe you'll suddenly see a perspective that very clearly gives you an answer as to what that is, and you may be in a position to be able to offer support, friendship, help, And so now you're not competing either. And as far as, again, men and women being different, our brains being different, we're hardwired differently. Um, but on many levels, it becomes a little bit easier because women, emotional. And that's the level at which they deal with. But when it's male and female is emotional, the guy understands that, oh, she's emotional and therefore I'm going to allow her. And, so I think those sort of dynamics become a little bit easier. Of course, there's the other attraction issue that comes into play, which is a big thing, and sexism and all of that becomes an issue, which I think is something that women deal with constantly, which may be a whole different topic for a webinar. But on an average, that's
One of the insights I got from somebody I learned a lot from was that when it comes to peer relationships, especially at work, it's important to be friendly and approachable. It's important to be social. It's important to be able to level with the other person and speak to them as equals, collaborate on work issues. You can be friendly with everybody, but you don't have to be friends with all. So
absolutely.
a deeper relationship or a deeper friendship, depends upon your individual chemistry with the person. Uh, with my peer group, I don't have to be friends with all of them, and as long as I maintain relationships, friendly, approachable, cordial manner, and we get work done and we have good times. We party together also when we have to, and we work together well when we have to. And nothing brings people together like work can, according to me. And so, being friendly with your peers without necessarily having to be friends with all is a learning that I derived, which I found held for me in good stead. That I can be approachable to everybody. And I would like to offer that to as an insight to our audience who's tuned in today.
Absolutely.
Okay, team members who are subordinates, so about work. Now, this is not always easy for women bosses. If you're a woman and you have subordinate team members, uh, it's not always easy because always, I don't know how many of you have seen that movie, The Devil Wears Prada. Because women, as it is today, is not an easy time for any leadership. No matter who's the leader, subordinates first, instinct is to caricature the boss and to project the boss in bad light. So no matter what you do, you can't be right. All right. But when you're a woman, two kinds of things can happen. A, you can be more welcomed because you're more empathetic. Okay, now I know this lady here. She will understand, she will empathize, she will know what I'm going through, and she can feel my emotions. I'm not saying men cannot empathize, men can empathize. I'm telling you, I've had male bosses who empathize hugely and who understood me perfectly. Uh, but women bosses, the stereotype is that they are more empathetic. When women also as bosses tend to be more criticized than male bosses. Today we are seeing, for example, in American politics, we are seeing so much of criticism about Donald Trump and his style of leadership because he's the male leader. But let me tell you, had Hillary been elected, she would have been subject to the same amount of criticism, perhaps more, because because if you have a woman boss, the expectations of team members, subordinate team members, is far more from a woman boss than from a male boss. So, women boss, definitely my experiences tend to be more criticized than male bosses. Also, relationships with subordinates usually benefit for women because women have a natural flair for empathy, listening, and relatedness. So, what is your take on subordinate team members and emotional intelligence, Ajita?
Well, I would definitely like to start with when you have touched upon the Trump and Hillary topic. If I ever could, I would have voted Hillary any day, hands down, for so many reasons. But, you know, The whole subordinate and sort of your team leader boss dynamic is very tenuous. Simply, first and foremost, if you talk about it in work terms, subordinates, each individual has a very defined role, and their expectations are well within just that. That's what they see, that's what they operate within, and that's, they want the boss to either give them the permission or whatever, within that. Whereas as a boss, you now, have a far larger role, far larger sort of, line of sight. And so it is very difficult for you to be one on one in trying to please everybody because I mean you have to upset somebody at some point because it's for the greater good. And I think that's where, as tough as the role is, our whole that sense of empathy, that sense of compassion, and we can really sort of play on that and be able to express and let people know sort of why they had to take a decision. It's just not like crack the whip and that's it sort of a thing, which a lot of male bosses end up doing because, my way or the highway kind of. And it's not that they're trying to be rude. It's just, they don't invest that kind of emotion and time in being very inclusive. And I beg your pardon, gentlemen, I'm not making this as a negative thing. Whereas women are more, even at home with the children, and we take that into every relationship. So I think we have the opportunity to, and it's not that easy, I know. So I can just almost hear some of the women saying, "I tried it, I tried it, I tried it. It doesn't work. It doesn't work." So it definitely, wherever we go, whether it's the boardroom, whether it's the lunchroom, we're always having to prove ourselves worthy constantly. And I actually live without validation most of the time.
Yes. So yes, so women as bosses, and I'm not playing up to any stereotype, but I'm just saying that you are subject to far more criticism than male bosses, and it's not as if women are lacking in empathy. Yes, I know I've seen a lot of women bosses who are literally like the devil wears Prada kind of bosses who drive their team members, hugely. And I think it's a lot about how you hold authority, how women tend to hold authority, and the grace that they bring to that, rather than being these harsh, women who crack whips, to being someone who can tap into your natural femininity and bring that to the fore, rather than having to follow a male stereotype of being a hard taskmaster and driving and pushing people around. So it's not as if your authority would not call you to be aggressive. Yes, your authority will call you to be aggressive. Your role will call you to drive results. Your role will call you to move people, in a common direction. That's what being a leader is also about. But I think women have an innate, natural tendency for empathy, listening, and relatedness, and that's the way leadership is going into the future.
Absolutely.
So I think some great insights for our audience so far. Keep your questions coming in, and we will address our questions raised by you in a short while from now. Okay, at work, in the morning I felt I finished my slides, and I've said, okay, we talked about women as bosses, as peers, and in subordinate relationships. But I think one area where I really want to touch upon at work is appraisal time. And most of my HR friends in the HR profession, they say that appraisal time is very stressful for us, especially when we have women, because almost 70 to 80% of the women end up crying during their appraisal. So, what do we do about it? How can we manage this? And I think personally, crying is not bad, but crying is a sign that I have a passion with which I've engaged in my role. And now I'm going to be judged on this role. And I think crying is also a sign of a deeper level of involvement. It's not just something I do, but it's who I am that I bring to the job, and the whole person comes to the job. And if I cry during a time when I'm being passed judgment, it's not intrinsically wrong. Crying is not wrong. And if I was in HR, I would say if a woman employee cries during appraisal time, take a break, give her time out, come back to it the next day, and deal with things in a more logical and rational manner when emotions are a little bit calmer. And by itself, crying is not something you should hold against a woman. So it's not the act of crying, it's also how do you feel at the end of the crying bout? How do you feel at the end of it? Do you feel you just let out your stress and you feel relieved? Thank goodness it's over. Or do you feel, oh my God, I cried in front of my boss. How could I do it? I wish I could bury my head in the sand somewhere. And how do we bring an emotionally intelligent response in a time of appraisal, which is the most stressful part of our working lives?
So, yeah, appraisals are any sort of appraisal, whether it's at work, whether so many times at a conversation, somebody says something about an outfit, walks into your home and comments on the sofa. That's all kind of sort of appraisal, the way women look at everything from an appraisal perspective. So, what is it really? Two things that I have to say. Again, I'm not going to say that, gentlemen definitely, probably it applies to them, but it applies a lot more to women. No matter what we do, whether it's our motherhood, whether it's, our homemaker abilities, our friendships, or work, we try to take the whole package of who I am into that role. So when I come appraisal time, and you comment on my lateness or my handwriting is untidy or maybe I didn't do so well on a certain project, now my entire being is being judged and quote unquote attacked. It's not just that, oh, you know what, I can't get to work on time because my son's bus comes late, or whatever. We can't compartmentalize, and we take everything personally.
And men don't do that.
Men don't do that. And that's actually an amazing quality. So once we do, we're taking it personally, and my entire being is now being attacked and, shattered. What option do I have but to retaliate either in crying or, I don't like this boss, I want a department change, or whatever it may be. And I think that we really have to learn to be very confident of our skills, know where we need to work because none of us are perfect, and compartmentalize everything and not take everything so personally because it is all about development, it is all about evolution, evolving ourselves. And I think it would be easier on the appraiser and the appraisee, and overall everybody would be way happier.
I really wish there was something like a vaccination or an inoculation that I could just keep injecting that helps me build my, immunity and helps me. So there are sometimes we draw from, metaphors outside of behavioral sciences, and if you can inoculate yourself to be resistant to certain disease, I wish there was an inoculation against judgment, because being judged is a way of life. No matter where you go, you will be judged. Let's not wish that away because it won't happen. It's a fool's paradise to think that someday will arrive where you will not face any judgment whatsoever. No, no, that's not going to happen ever. You will be judged today, tomorrow, day after, on everything. And men are judged too. It's just that women are judged on silly things like what I'm wearing and how I'm looking and how is my hair today, and people will pay me compliments, and so judgment is a fact of life. And we don't like to be judged. There's nobody who likes to be judged, and judgment will happen. So, is there some way to vaccinate myself or inoculate myself so that I do not break down when faced with a judgment. I think that holds the key. So each one of us has a coping mechanism or a learning mechanism. And as we grow older and as we mature, we find, okay, similar judgments are coming. I have encountered this one before. It's not the first time I've been told I'm overweight. It's not the first time I've been told my handwriting is bad. It's not the first time I've been told I missed my goals and my sales targets for the year. So over a period of time, getting used to it, getting and later on becoming a little immune to it, and I can say, okay, that judgment is actually good feedback for me. It's a good opportunity for me to know what I should do more of and what I should do less of. I think that's the path to an emotionally intelligent response at appraisal time. What do you say, Ajita?
Yeah, absolutely. Because what is appraisal really? Appraisal is not to beat people down. It is that, we collectively are working for an organization on a common path.
Absolutely.
And what is it that we need to do to continue to evolve and up our game? So, because we all want to be upwardly mobile and do better and better in life. And that's really what it is. So, if we don't take it personally, and it really ideally should start when we are much younger, so that we can listen to, I won't call it criticism, but the appraisal of whatever needs to be done differently as an opportunity, like you very rightly said, to improve, to do better. And it's all about being open-minded and saying, okay, you know what, I do want to do better, so how can I do this? If and the funny thing is, if you as an individual went to your boss and said, can you please tell me what I need to do differently? And they can say the exact same thing that they would put in a report, but we would not react the same way. Or maybe, the appraisal should be called something a little bit different and we can make it friendlier. I don't know if a corporate
review discussion. That's
Yeah,
what they're doing these days.
yeah,
With appraisal. They
whatever.
call it better names.
Yeah, but it's just, if we're open-minded and we want to truly be better at what we're doing and continue to evolve, then, we just don't take it personally and that's it.
Yeah. So I think the path to learning and growing and giving a more emotionally intelligent response to appraisal time is to see ways in which I can look at my performance appraisal, yes, as a judgment, I'm not denying that, but also as an opportunity to know stuff that I need to work upon and ways in which I can improve myself.
Yeah.
Okay, here is where we cross over from work issues to life issues, and in the middle is the work-life balance issue. And I think this is for most of the women I know who are working, and even those who gave up their jobs when they took a baby break, which I also did when I had a baby. I took a break for 3 years. And most of us, once the children come, and it's a balancing act, and more than balancing, I think sometimes it's jugglery. Balancing means you're in equilibrium and walking on a tightrope, but it's anything but equilibrium. To me, it's jugglery, where it's a constant struggle to find an equilibrium all the time. You always feel guilty that you are not doing justice to your baby, to your cooking, to your work, to your finances, to everything. You don't feel so. There are a lot of guilt traps along the way. Sometimes, which are from the world outside. So members of the family will say, "Hey, who's looking after the children when you're traveling out?" Or you're made to feel guilty. Some of the guilt is of your own making, and what are the choices we make, what are the priorities we set. I don't think there is any one formula that I can say is an emotionally intelligent response to this issue. There are so many responses possible, as many women there out there. Each one struggles initially when faced with work-life conflicts and conflicting expectations and commitments, commitments to work and to life and to family and children. And I don't think there's any one formula that works as an emotionally intelligent response. But I find when women initially get into this, and when I myself initially got into having to juggle my work and life, I made a lot of adjustments. I don't call them compromises because I try to maximize my outcomes to to the extent possible. But yes, there were adjustments in terms of looking at more flexible working hours, looking at more working from home, and looking at a lot of things that I did to balance out and to juggle the situation. So I think each and every woman has to find an individual path that works for her based upon her context, what she's comfortable with, and what extent of compromises she can make. There is no one formula that works here.
Absolutely. Culturally, like you said, and every family and every couple kind of decides. Um, with the with how society has changed, and to a great extent, with women going out and contributing to society in terms of work, the family dynamic and the home dynamic changed. For a while, she had all the pressures of the family, of the work, to perform brilliantly and superlatively in both cases. Then the gentleman, the next generation started to pitch in, and they became, to a great extent, quite equal partners. When the kids are sick, they will sit up with them. They'll try and come back early. A lot of them cook, clean, so they started to share responsibilities. But innately, I think women are still expected to be, because they are the nurturers, and they are sort of the life givers. They are the only ones that can have the babies, etc. So what I'm reminded of is when you're on a plane and they're giving you the safety instructions, and they say, loss of cabin pressure, put the oxygen mask on yourself before you put it on even your baby. Why do they say that? Because if you were to faint and pass out, there is nobody to take care of your baby. So that concept, I think we have to really come to terms with, and women are not taught this. We think eternal sacrifice on every level makes us a better mother, wife, daughter, and a human being. And then after a while, we get completely spent, emotionally, physically. So if we don't fall into these guilt traps and appreciate that we are human beings that require rest and self-love and things like that, and if we take care of ourselves, we take a much healthier person into work, because now our home life is so much more stable, and so when we're at work, we're not worrying about our children and what do I have to cook, and my husband, how's he going to feel. And I think it results in a far better work-life balance. And an individual, you are individually far more balanced, because if you're not balanced, you're taking that imbalance everywhere. So it starts with us. Same applies to the gentleman. As human beings, our first responsibility is to ourselves, not being from us. It's not selfish. It is the preservation of your happiness and your environment in which you operate and function.
Yeah, so what I hear you saying is that perhaps it's a better option to have children with a mother who's happy, juggling and going to work, rather than for children who have a mother who sacrificed everything and sat at home just to take care of them.
Yeah, and then is frustrated, and she
And I
comes
do
out
remember
somewhere.
coming across one research about a month ago, which spoke about children of working moms who juggled and compromised, having much higher emotional intelligence than children who simply sat, of mothers who gave up their jobs to sit at home and just look after them. There is some research also that supported
Yeah,
this.
because not only are you using and learning tools to be efficient, you're also now teaching your children and your husband and your in-laws and your parents how to cope and adjust to the situation, and everybody develops some very amazing mechanisms. And therefore, what you're talking about most definitely is proven actually.
When we look at all these situations from an emotional intelligence point of view and say how do I find my well-being and my wholesomeness as far as this issue in my life is concerned, I find that in the end what matters is how you feel about yourself. That's what matters.
Absolutely.
And there's no right and wrong here. Uh, there's no compulsion that you must go back to work after the children come along. There's no compulsion that you must sit at home. It's for you to set your own boundaries, and it's a very individual thing. And what matters more is how do you feel with yourself and about yourself at the end of it. That's what matters most. And that's the insight I would like to offer my audience today. Okay, life and other women. Okay, I have a lot of BFFs, my best friends forever, and they're mostly women, and I enjoy girls' company. I can chat and I can feel free, and I enjoy women's company. And I love doing girly talks. Where did you buy those earrings? And oh my God, that handbag is great. And how can I, do my hair better? I love girly talk, and exchanging recipes and about how to cook. I just love that. And I'm not saying that it is the result of some negative conditioning that I had, that feminine qualities and things like. No, I simply love. I know deep down inside, I love being a woman, and I love doing things that girls do. So girly talk is something that sometimes also you wonder, did I mean, why the hell should we talk about cooking, and why the hell should we talk about clothes? These things don't matter. So it's again, it's up to you what you like. Sometimes women can be your worst enemies. They are your harshest critics, and sometimes women don't support other women. Women can be very, very competitive, far more competitive than men can be. But in the end, to me, the gal pals are the best. I love being with my girls, my friends, and enjoying girls' night out and just hanging out with the gals. What do you say, Ajita?
Absolutely. So I spent this past weekend with a friend that I went to university with. So I've known her for 28 years, and we were soul sisters in the first 5 minutes that we sort of met in class, and we've been great friends since. And I think that is sort of, we have the same issues, we have the same needs. Like you said, purses, shoes. I mean, can you imagine talking to a guy about purses and shoes? They'll just look at you like, what the hell are you talking about? Who cares? So we have all of these commonalities which we love, whether they're friends, whether you're sisters, cousins, even mom and a daughter relationships. And yet we have that little competitive spirit, that little jealousy, that little, which sort of oozes up and, boils over, and we may feel bad and get angry for a little while. But eventually, I think the love prevails in most cases. And, I mean, I always say this to all of my clients that if you have any relationships where they're sucking the positivity and sort of really constantly making you feel bad, then that's a relationship that you must step out of because it's not serving you. But other than that, like they say, this is just the spice of life.
Yes. And I want to remind the audience right now we are at 4:15. We have 45 minutes left. So just taking a time check. In another 10 minutes, we ought to be able to start doing the question and answers. So please send in your questions, keep texting us, and we will address the best questions that come to us. Okay, this is the big word called feminism. And today, in the past we had feminism was the big movement that fought for women's equality and women's rights. And I think in many segments and at many levels, feminine is still alive because there are huge areas in which we still have to do a lot of work to bring women rights as equal to men's rights, just including in cricket. I think today, last week, some of the cricket that we saw from the women was far better than some of the cricket we have seen from the men in terms of the style, the intelligence, the skill, the techniques. Is the women will never get the recognition that men would in cricket. So I think in many segments, cricket is only one of them. Feminism is still alive, and we still have to bring women on par with men. So that continues. But many organizations have now evolved in the way their cultures are to move beyond equality and to bring more inclusive work policies. So, yes, you have a set of rights that women are entitled to equal pay and equal on all counts. But we found that when you give the women's rights, the cultures of organizations still somewhat discriminatory. So we had to work towards inclusive work policies. So, what is an emotionally intelligent response to give to the issues of feminism and inclusivity? That is my question today.
So I'm suddenly reminded when I was in school, a BFF of mine at the time and myself, we had a T-shirt that said, "What boys can do, girls can do better." And I think we wore it with great pride, except when I look back sitting here today, all these years later, I don't really think I understood what truly it meant. It just meant that we were better and we wanted to be better. Um, my personal opinion, and I beg your pardon if a lot of people may not agree, is that I don't think feminism came about at a time when women needed to, everything was male dominated and they needed to fight to, to come up in life and to be able to do all the things they wanted to do. In 2017, it's really sad that we need to talk about feminism and inclusivity. And I really address this now, especially to the 40 gentlemen that are here. It is still a male dominated society, and it should not be. I think it's the yin and the yang. The world comprises of men and women, and together we make it complete. So, like at home, we don't make the men feel inferior or think that, oh, we're so great and, your position is somewhere else. There is that mutual respect, and we should be able to bring that to work. Um, I know sadly that's not the case, and that's not the case in North America either, which, purportedly is such a sort of evolving society. The statistics between working women in India and their experiences and the statistics in North America aren't too different.
Yeah.
So it is, a global world issue. And I'm just saying very simplistically, it should not be. There is no reason. Women are very intelligent. Women, bring a very creative perspective to things. Just because the left brain, right brain thing comes into the play between men and women. And, I don't know if women, like if I'm fighting for something, then I'm fighting for it and I come across as being just bad. Mm-hmm. So I think the onus really lies on the men to step up to the plate, to appreciate what the women bring to the table, and just open the doors and say, hey, come in. We're going to share this.
But my message to all the girls out there: if you have to fight, then don't think of it as a bad action.
Correct.
Because
I didn't mean to say that.
If I am encountering, well, the day I encounter inhibition and from men-dominated groups that I go to, the day I find that I'm not included in work groups because of being a woman, the day I find, and I do encounter these every day, please let me tell you, I still encounter a lot of discrimination at work, and I still encounter. And when I do, I fight, but I fight in my own ways, and I fight against it in my own ways. So please do not give up the fight.
Oh,
because
absolutely.
Giving up the fight means giving up, giving into centuries and centuries of male domination. So don't give up the fight. Don't tolerate non-inclusivity and male dominance. Uh, Find constructive ways to deal with it and assert yourself don't give up the fight.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't
Feminist
mean.
activism still rocks.
Absolutely. If the women in, whenever back in the day had not done what they did, we would not be here. We would still be in the dark ages, like you rightly said.
Yes.
So
So those who
please,
started the fight,
yeah,
we have
please,
to respect them.
please do not send me emails saying that I was, I'm a feminist out and out. It blows my mind that we still have to have this discussion, and that is the only point I was trying to make.
Okay, we encounter the men's club. Okay, they're the ones who made the rules. They're the ones who wrote the scriptures. I don't think there were any female scripture writers. It was
No,
always men who wrote the scriptures also. So the Ramayana and Mahabharata were written by men.
absolutely.
And I think okay, accept the fact that the men made the rules, but we can rewrite them, or we can challenge, or we can create a different set of rules. That's fine. Um, will men be your best supporters or your worst enemies? It's up to you to decide. How you will collaborate with the rules. I have found, a lot of generation of young women who have been my students and my, coaches and in my participants in my programs in the past. I find that they have been anti-establishment, anti-men's rules all their lives. And at no point in time did they consider alignment or adjustment or collaboration as a choice. For them, the only way they could be was to rebel against the system and against the rules that uh, were made by the men's club, uh, and uh, and I think somewhere the men have done great things. Men built the Taj Mahal, and men built fought the water battles and wars, and men built organizations, great organizations like the Tatas and all of them. So I think men have done great things, and we need to respect them for that. And um, find ways in which we can collaborate rather than compete all the time. It's much easier to collaborate and find common ground, and say these are things that at least we agree on and we can work together on. But it's your choice and you decide what you would like to do.
I have a son who's just turning 21 next week, and when I speak to him, I see a very, very bright world because in his mind, there are very few, almost no boundaries and walls and filters, whether it is, sexual orientation, whether it is, there are no gender biases. They study with girls as they're very equal. They're just people like them. So I think, of course, men have done amazing, amazing things, and the world is greatly built by them, and they have always loved and supported and cherished and respected women in so many ways. That I think going forward, we're just building on all of that, and things are getting better and better with every passing day, however minuscule it may be. But I think we're moving in the right direction.
So great. I am getting a lot of signals from CII that let's get into question and answers now. So there are issues on money and finance. I wish I had a lot of time. Maybe we'll do one entire webinar on women emotionally intelligent response to money matters and financial independence someday. Um Issues of loneliness, because I do find that women who want to move ahead and be successful in life do experience a lot of loneliness because it's their own battle and it's a very individual battle. A few tips on living life and loving work, living a life with forgiveness, gratitude, acceptance, and empathy. Someday we will do an entire webinar only on these four subjects. That is a wonderful thing. But in the end, I would like to say, your feelings get the better of you sometimes, and you get the better of your feelings at others. But Life is never perfect. There's always turbulence around. There's so many pressures. There's so many issues all simultaneously happening. It's becoming more and more complex to more and more difficult to be successful, more and more complex to manage work and life. And often it's only about staying on top. It's a psychological game you play with your emotions. I'm on top of things and I'm not drowning under. Anyone else in my position would have drowned under, but it's often about just staying on top because at times you can't do everything about managing an emotionally intelligent response to the situation. So yes, I'm emotionally all messed up inside, but I'm on top of things. That also is a very, very healthy state of affairs to be. It doesn't matter if it's all chaos and confusion and disgust and disillusionment and anger and hatred. It doesn't matter. At least I'm on top of it all. I'm not drowning on under.
Don't
And
lose focus.
and when the water flows above your neck and you say, "Oh my God, I've had enough," don't hesitate to seek help. Today, there are life coaches, psychologists, psychotherapists, clinical psychotherapists, and there are psychiatrists. They are trained and that are experienced in helping you stay on top of things. So, when the water flows above the neck, it is not a stigma to seek help. Always remember there is always help at hand. So we're taking questions now. All right, so questions are coming in. Have you typed your question yet? Oh my God, there are so many questions. Just bringing up. Okay, question. I used to get depressed when my plans don't work as I expected. Can you please suggest some methods to overcome such kind of situations? This is a question from Tinsy Matthew, and she wants to know what to do when plans don't work. In fact, if plans work, that is a surprising situation. My understanding of reality is that uh, nothing ever goes according to plan. You may have some idea about what you want to do with your life, but then there's a bigger plan that God has for you. So, acceptance of the evolving and the emerging situation and a willingness to follow the energies that surround you and go with the flow is what I would suggest for you to look at that as an option.
And also, Anita, you had a slide on perfectionism, and I think that's the trap that we get into when before we start anything, we need to sort of have an idea of what are the pitfalls and the possible outcomes, and then play within that instead of expecting that I would like everything to be perfect, and if it isn't, then clearly it can be a very upsetting situation.
Okay, Tejaswini has asked a question: IQ and EQ, which is more important to you? Tejaswini Navghare, um, my response to you is, the topic of this webinar is emotional intelligence for talented women. We all working women have great IQ. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in a job. We wouldn't be capable, competent women in a job. We have great IQ. The reason why we fail is sometimes we don't manage our emotional quotient. So IQ is good at getting you the job. I got good grades in school. I did well in engineering college, and I know I have a lot of knowledge I can bring to my job. But emotional quotient is that which gets you your promotion and success. IQ doesn't guarantee your promotion. EQ guarantees your promotion. So I hope that answers your question.
And for the longest time, I think the measure was always IQ. And then at some point, psychologists and people realized that there was another component, and then they brought in the whole emotionality part of it, and EQ became a very parallel to IQ. And Aneeta, you very rightly said, you can have the highest IQ in the organization, and you can miserably fail if you don't manage your emotions properly in your relationships.
Okay, Archana Kumari has asked two questions, but we'll take one question per person, and then if we finish all the questions, we'll come back to your second question, Archana. I'm going to take up your second question, which is more interesting. So, Archana Kumari asked a question that many men play politics at work, and yet they manage to work less and still get recommended. How far is this way of working required to be followed? Well, when I entered the workforce, I was very young and naive. But I had a great mentor in my boss who told me, Anita, there are a lot of unwritten rules of success. And if you can master the unwritten rules, then you will be successful in life. Now, politics is something that we always blame others with, that they play games and that they play the politics. We never own up that we played politics. I never heard anyone saying that I played a game and I won, and I played a political game and I won. We always blame others because we lose. When you ask the person who has been blamed for playing politics, that person was just being true to his task and his goal, and finding his ways to be successful. And then when you add a gender issue to it, saying that all men play politics, women don't play politics, I don't think that's true. One thing is certain, that if you do not play the game, you're not in the game and you won't be even considered to get recommended. So play the game you have to. There is no situation where you will not encounter politics, and there is no situation in which you. And I can make this the subject of yet one more webinar, and we can talk about what are these unwritten rules and how do we play this game. What should be our emotionally intelligent choices? Only two things I will say. You have to play the game, you have to be a part of the game if you want to succeed. But two recommendations is, one, the game cannot be 100% of what you do. Because if you make it 100% of what you do, then organization loses, and you will have to find a way to do something else with your life. So at best, the political game can be 20 to 30% of what you do. The rest of it has to be work oriented, number one. So play the game you must. The second thing I would like to say about politics is, the challenge is not to play the game. The challenge is, how do I play the game and still keep my integrity with myself? How do I how do I not compromise on my values, on what I believe in, and what my ethics dictate? So very often people who play politics, they lose sight of their own self and who they are, and winning becomes everything. Brownie points become everything. So two challenges when you play the game. One, how do I minimize this game and keep it to 20 to 30% of what I do? Is not everything. And second is, how do I not lose integrity with myself? Those are the two big challenges. So that's my advice to you, Archana.
I think you sort of pretty much cover the whole topic so well, Anita. Instead of fighting the system, it's like the game of soccer. When or I think it's called football here. When you're playing, when two teams are playing, People are going to circumvent the rule a little bit because the goal is to, or the task is to make the goal. So it's important to be able to navigate that and play the game. It's where you call it politics, you call it playing the game, it doesn't matter. That's what needs to be done. But I love what you're saying, and that's really the point I wanted to make. You don't have to do it dishonestly. You don't have to do it badly. Take the steps that you need to and just do it with integrity, because eventually the person who plays this dirty political game gets called out. So, eventually they will lose.
Yeah, just remember the game is a knockout game, and winning, surviving is important. Okay, we move to the next question. And again, I have two or three questions from Mistry. Sorry, Khyati Mistry. Okay, Khyati says, I'm a very impatient person and cannot wait for results. So, what can be done about it? My simple advice to Khyati is make it your strength, not your weakness. Being impatient is actually a strength. Jawaharlal Nehru was an impatient person. Mahatma Gandhi was very impatient. He said, quit India or otherwise, I'm not going to take anything else. But yet, when you begin a battle, you don't know when the results will come and in what manner they'll come and whether they'll come at all. So be impatient with every action. The results will happen when they have to happen. So make impatience your strength and not your weakness.
I think a great exercise of going inwards, like meditation, not only can take care of the feeling of being impatient and just wanting to reach the goal immediately, but also it just helps you in performing your tasks really much better and just being much happier, and overall your performance is greatly improved if you can get into some sort of a meditation practice.
Second question from Khyati Mishri. I like the question, so I'm going to take it. Khyati says, I always get stuck with two priorities in my life and always have a dilemma to choose which one. How can I work upon that as always an emotional option? I choose first and then I regret for not choosing the other one. How can I manage such things? Well, you can follow your heart or you can follow your head. It's up to you what you give more priority to. You can follow your heart and never live a day of regret in your life. And you can follow your head and be reassured that you did the right thing. Um, just know at the time of making a choice, we always pay a price for not choosing the other option. And once you realize that this is going to be my price for not choosing the other option, then the regrets don't happen. And even if the regrets do happen, it's all right to have a few regrets in life. And learn to recognize, hey, I regretted that I chose option one and not option two. And recognize, yes, I live with that regret. And then sooner or later, you'll find a way to heal that, isn't it?
One of the things that we do is we write down our goals. And then we keep going back to that written list to keep us on track. So writing down something is an incredible tool. And I invite each and every one of you, those of you that don't do this, maintain a journal or a book that you write in every single day. So if you've had a tough situation with somebody, write it honestly. How did you feel? What is your analysis? What came out of it, etc., etc. Just once you get into writing, it's black and white there for you to read then. Your analysis of it is far greater than when it's only in your head. At a certain time you're thinking something through, and then you've got another 50,000 other thoughts that take over. But when something is written down, it crystallizes it. It's something you can go back to, because if you have a similar situation 2 weeks later, you can go back and say, okay, what did I do? What did that person do? And it gives you a lot more clarity on how to move forward, what basic changes you can make, what conversations you can have with other people, and being able to choose A over B will become much easier. When you can actually critically analyze something. So journaling, I suggest that everybody take that as a habit.
That's a great thing to do. I remember when I was much younger, I used to keep a diary, and it always helped to write down at the end of the day just a few things. And today we've got a lot of technology. We can make voice notes and write those down. Just take stock of the day and the situation,
Yeah, and even
and that helps.
your achievements.
Yeah.
I mean, you just run through the day, and there's a lot of value in that.
Okay, I have a question coming up from Situ Barreto. And Sithu Barreto says, how do I utilize criticism for my own growth? And to me, criticism is nothing but an opportunity. But I just have 2 or 3 points to make here. First of all, know where your criticism is coming from. If the criticism is coming from somebody who has a need to put you down, then by all means form a wall which protects you from such criticism that's intended to make you feel small and intended to underestimate your capabilities. If criticism is coming with an intention to help and is putting a mirror in your face, then yes, use the criticism, look at it. What is the feedback I'm getting? What does this tell me about what things I should do more of, what things I should do less of? And use the criticism to build your own self confidence and do more of the things that work for you and less of the things that don't work for you. The third point is uh, learn to differentiate between criticism that is a value judgment on who you are versus criticism that talks about some of the achievements that you did and what you could have done better and what skills you could have adopted. If criticism is judging you as a human being, as a person, and saying who you are is wrong, then by all means throw that criticism out of the window. But if criticism is telling you these are the things that you did which could have been done better, and if you had learned this particular task, you would have done it. If criticism is data based, it's fact based, based in reality and specifics, then by all means, it's a learning opportunity for you. Ajita?
I think it's a fantastic question, because what it triggers and should trigger is self-analysis. You, I think it's very important for each one of us in life to sit down and make a list very, very honestly of who we think we are. That becomes your starting point. So then when you encounter criticism, you have a good idea of whether it's warranted, there is a change to be made, or it's coming from somebody else's, skewed perspective. And whether you need to tweak it, you need to make a change, and your own growth, your own development can become a really big sort of. It is an important part of us, but I don't think we take it as seriously. So when you do this critical analysis of yourself, then that becomes sort of your starting point, and you don't have to take everything very personally either, and still evolve where you need to.
Okay, we move to our next question by Banu J. Banu says, I am very patient. I tolerate all things that happen around me, but when it reaches my threshold, I burst out. And at that time, I'm considered emotional. How should I react? This is a classical case of, where emotional intelligence will definitely help. Uh, One of the early lessons I learned was that what is emotional intelligence is nothing but adding intelligence to your emotions. What does that mean? Intelligence consists of logic, reason, analysis, uh, clarity. Those are all things that intelligence consists of. And when I add that to my emotions, it makes me more emotionally intelligent. That was one of the definitions. So let's see in your situation, Banu, what can we do to add some intelligence to this situation? First of all, you tolerate things, which means you do experience an emotion when things are not going your way. Those emotions are something you're just tolerating. You are not giving expression to your emotion, number one. Okay, you're not giving expression. You're treating your emotion as illegitimate and not a valid part of who you are. And when it bursts out, it comes out in a way which is unhealthy and causes damage to the world outside, and more importantly, it causes damage to you. Now, take for example anger. Anger causes more damage to the person who is angry than it does to the rest of the world. Anger causes losing your temper causes damage to the rest of the world, that's for sure. People get hurt, but more than anybody else getting hurt, it's you yourself who get hurt more when you lose your temper. Your eyes bulge out, your heart starts pulping, you know. So what is the intelligence you can act on? First of all, with a lot of my coaches, I make this statement. Anger is a valid emotion. It's perfectly fine. Even Gandhiji was angry that the Britishers were occupying India. Okay, it's perfectly fine to be angry with things that don't go the way they ought to. In the morning, one of my friends on Facebook, she posted today how she went for a walk in the morning this morning on Carter Road Beach, and a man made an obscene gesture at her and drove away, and how angry she was. And even I was very angry how something like this can happen in my city and in my neck of the woods out there. So even I was, anger is a perfectly valid emotion. Losing temper, that's wrong. So learn to differentiate between anger and temper. That's the first thing. Gandhiji never lost his temper, but he was angry with the British for sure. But he never lost his temper. Never, not once. Okay, so being angry is fine. Losing temper is not fine. So once you recognize that, then you can deal with your anger. You can learn to identify what triggers your anger. So when somebody around you is not doing things as expected or constantly making mistake, it makes you angry. When somebody tries to get one up on you, it makes you angry. When a man makes a lewd gesture at a woman, it makes you angry. Or when a boss throws his weight around, it makes you angry. Try to identify what are the triggers to your anger. And generally, when we're coaching and counseling people, we discover there are usually one or two incidents that are major triggers. It's not a whole range. You're not angry with everybody for everything. There are usually one or two things that make you angry. And when you know what the trigger to your anger is, then it's a question of learning better ways to deal with that situation the next time it happens. So add intelligence to your emotions, add logic, add reason, add cause and effect, add yourself to your emotions. I hope this answers your question, Banu. If it doesn't, feel free to write me an email anytime or call out and I can have a conversation with you on this subject anytime. Ajita?
So you very clearly say that you're patient, you wait, and then you blow up. So as a rule, I think we are encouraged to, have a threshold where you keep taking, keep taking, keep taking. And our idea of conflict management or our idea of self-expression is based on, or we are encouraged to keep quiet and take something that we don't like. So that's, I think, where the problem arises because the resentment keeps building up, and then you have no option but to react. But by the time your reaction is very severe, because you've been feeling that hurt for a very long time. So, ideally, what should happen is let's take a very common example of women and being overweight, and if somebody keeps calling somebody, "Oh, you're fat, you're fat." I mean, that's terrible. So instead of waiting to be told 100 times and then really, exploding, the first time somebody says something that you do not like, you can be very polite but firm and let them know that I don't like it. It's not your place to say, or whatever you want to say. What you're doing is then you're creating healthy boundaries for yourself and for everybody else to interact with you. This is my space. You are not allowed to comment on this, and or whatever the conversation may be, but you express yourself politely and firmly the first time around. So then, when the fifth time, if they continue and you explode, they will not be able to call you emotional because you've made it very clear time and again that they're overstepping their boundaries. And I think that's one of the things that we all need to learn. We need to create boundaries which people are not allowed to cross.
Okay, Banu, I think a lot of consideration for your question. There are many more. There's so many. I don't think we'll be able to answer all. We've got another 5 minutes left, and I do want to make some wind-up statements. So I think we'll take the last question. Um, Shruti Desai says, "Hello, ma'am. How do I tackle fear of failure?" Okay, last night I was having dinner with a person, and he mentioned to me that it's great to be a part of a team that is so successful, and we are doing great work now, and it's always good. But you know what? The reason it's always good with this team is because this team was not performing so well some time ago. They learned and they struggled, they worked, they collaborated, and now they're successful, but they enjoy the success more because we failed before. Had we not failed before, we would not have enjoyed the success that we are experiencing now. And I thought that was such a lovely, wise insight that unless you've tasted failure, you don't enjoy success. It's as simple as that. You're constantly successful and you're afraid to fail, um, you will lose the success that you already have. So there is fear of failure is usually seated in very high expectations during your early formative childhood years. People have had very high expectations. You must always succeed. You must always come first in your class, and you must always be successful in the sports and the games and everything. So unless you have failed, you don't really enjoy the successes. Because if you have not failed and you be constantly successful in your life, your success has always been tinged with the fear of failure and it's never pure joy. The real joy of success comes only after you have failed. So if you can bring this lesson to yourself, fine. Um, Ajita, you have something to say?
Yeah, and I mean, you touch upon a very critical aspect of this fear of failure. But within these parameters, what you can actually do, if you think about it, and we tell our children this all the time, the only thing that any of us can ever do is the best in any given situation. And that's all you can do. So if you take that into everything that you do, then I'm going to give my 100% and I'm going to give my best, and there's nothing more that I can do with it, and really not be concerned with the result, you will find instead of going into something with the expectation of doing brilliantly well and therefore having the fear of failure, that becomes sort of predominant in your head. Whereas you just take the task, whatever that may be, and do the best you can, work the hardest you can, And you know what? You'll find that you don't have the fear and you actually do much better because everything becomes about the task.
That's wonderful. And we have another 5 minutes to go. And I'm closing the question and answer session here. We're going to get back to the next slide, please. Okay, I just want to thank everybody who has been a part of this exercise. But before we do that, I want to share with you a little bit about Indian Women's Network and encourage all the 1,000 people who are enrolled over here and registered here to become a member of the Indian Women's Network. And just so that you know, CII has initiated a number of measures to increase the role of women in economic activity and growth. The IWN or Indian Women's Network was launched as an exclusive platform for career women in 2013, and the Western Region chapter of which is hosting this webinar today was launched in 2014. Nearly 50% of the women fall off the workforce between junior to middle management levels across the board, and the reasons are manifold. To address this leaky pipeline, CIR Western Region Indian Women's Network unveiled an ambitious program, 100 Hours of Change, as an attempt to create the biggest pool of women mentors who can help students and other young professionals to rise to the full potential in their careers. Over the last 2 years, the Indian Women's Network Western Region has mentored over 5,000 young women across the Western region. So, if you would like to contribute to the world of women at work at all levels, starting from the boardroom to the rural areas, Indian Women's Network is making a difference and bringing change in people's lives. Do register as a member and be one of the change makers along with other women who matter in this world. Uh, the image that you can see on your screen right now is a few talented, lovely, young, emotionally intelligent women who are driving the women's network as of now. A word of thanks to CII, IWN, Kashmira Mewawala, who has been leading this chapter for the last couple of years and has been an inspiration to many of us. A wonderfully emotionally intelligent person, and some of my contact details are given over here, and you're most welcome to write in. All of you who have unanswered questions, I would request you to note down the email address given in this slide and write your question in, and I will definitely respond to it in writing within the next few days. Thank you so much. Thank you once again. Thank you for tuning in, each and every one of this lovely audience.